Hi there, Roseville Pathways students. I'm Mrs. Tredo. I'm one of the two district librarians here at Roseville Joint Union High School District, and I'm here today with a two-part video lesson about evaluating resources that you find online and then utilizing our databases or digital resources that our district subscribes to, how to navigate those to support you in research, in doing a class presentation, in speech and debate. These videos are mainly going to be for social science. I'm going to be looking at social science topics. Truly, though, you can get these skills and then use them anywhere. It's just that I'm going to focus more on our world studies curriculum for this particular lesson, but you could use this in government or economics or whatever class you have. Maybe you have a dual enrollment class or a class that you take here on ground at either school. But this works for middle college, all the above. So we're going to get started. This is a video lesson. I'm not here in person because I have a lot of libraries that I am in charge of right now. So, what I wanted to do was deliver this virtual lesson. And then, if your teacher is there, what you can do, there are a lot of embedded videos. I'm not going to play the videos during the lesson. So, I always suggest to teachers that they pull up another tab in the videos that I reference in the slideshow, that you could stop this and then you could watch the video and then come back. I like that better because students can go in. Maybe you're looking for just a little particular piece and then students can play those. If you're a student, hi, and you're working from home or whatever, maybe you're doing this because this was assigned to you independently, you can kind of stop and go through and watch the videos as you decide to, because you can kind of go back and forth. So I started with part one, which is going to be evaluating website sources and seeing if things are credible that we find on the internet. And then the second video will be the digital resource video. This is all one giant presentation, but I'm doing two separate videos, and I hope that makes sense. So we will get started. All right. Um, Research. That's what your teacher has asked of me to share with you. So, research, we're doing it all the time. I do it as a student. I'm a librarian student right now working on my master's in library. I'll earn that in May. And I have done a lot of research over the past 4 years that I've been in this journey. But just know that research helps you be a better student. The better researcher you are, the better you'll be in your studies. Okay. So research just isn't academic. Keep in mind that when you're looking for those life questions, like what type of car should I have? How do I rent an apartment? All of those life questions, if you actually are able to find information that's balanced, it's going to help you. The skill is going to help you no matter what you're doing. So it's very important. One thing that I actually wanted to share with you all are some resources here. I'm not going to click out of this tab, but just know that these links are highlighted. This is just for if you have a research paper. I find these to be very good resources for you to use. I really like the Purdue OWL. I use that all the time, especially when you're looking at having to cite sources, like you have to do MLA or APA, or you have to do Chicago style, source citations in a paper. I think this is great. So just know that those are there for you. But basically, where we're going to start right now is just when you have a topic and you're trying to figure out what do I want to know about it, you're going to find different sources. So I think a lot of times there's a misconception about anything you find online, that it's online and it could be bad, right? So just know that you have to understand what type of information exists online, right? And be able to figure out. So there's different ones. There's news organizations, there's reference sources. So a news organization example would be maybe NPR, National Public Radio, right? But a reference source, that could be dictionary.com. It could also be Wikipedia. And I know that teachers in the past have vilified Wikipedia. They absolutely hate it. But I think Wikipedia is, as a reference, it's a great spot to start when you're looking to research something. If you don't know anything about a topic, it does help to go there first just to get a basic general idea. Would you be using that as a reference in an academic paper? No, but you have to start small, right? So I always say, Wikipedia it gets vilified, but it does have its uses. And then there's also government. So the Center for Disease Control is a government entity. There's academic and research institutions. There's universities. There's academic journals, which in video too we'll get to looking at peer-reviewed academic journals using the digital resources that the district has. And then there's also private groups and individuals. So you could have a lobbyist group, you could have a business, you could have an advocacy group, you could have a nonprofit. There's lots, the private groups and individuals, that's a huge umbrella. One thing you're going to notice on this little slideshow is that there isn't anything that says social media, because social media is not a source. It's a platform where people put sources on there. So actually, any of these entities could put something out on social media. That's where it's really difficult to discern whether or not something is good, because they've got it all laid out there. And you don't know who actually put this on social media, and you have to do the research and do your due diligence, as we would say. All right. Another thing, Google gets vilified because students like Google because it's convenient, right? It's a convenient search engine. But the problem with using Google, if you had an academic research project, or if you're trying to support an argument, you're in class, you have a debate, you want to look back at, World War One resources. The problem with Google is they do a thing called PageRank, which I'll take us out so you can see. It's kind of one of those things where what is popular is not always right. So Google uses the algorithm of the most popular websites. So if you type in World War One, you're going to find the websites where people mostly go to look at information about World War One. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily the most accurate information, right? It's just simply information that's there and it's popular, but it might not be good for your purpose. So that's the thing. And we talk here about the deep web, right? And the invisible web. And a lot of the stuff that you need to support your argument in a quality academic paper would be something that you would get not via Google. That's going to be in the second video. Okay. Some of the things you might find as we go along here, you might be able to use it, but at least you're going to be able to discern or understand this would work for my purpose, this doesn't work for my purpose. All right. The other thing that you have to remember that all websites do is they do a thing called they do the CRAP test, right? So you're looking at, is this current? You're looking at the relevance. You're looking at the authority. You're looking at if it's accurate, and you're looking at the purpose. So you have to factor all of those things in when you find something online. You're looking for an article. I often give the example of if you're doing a paper on immigration, right? Currency. If you're looking at immigration in the modern times, like immigration now to the United States, that's very different than, the issues that immigrants who came here maybe in like 1910 would have happened. So if you're looking at an article, you're finding a source and it's talking about immigration in 1910, and you're looking at the issues now related to immigration, that might not be the best thing for you to use. So a lot of times students get buried in very, very vague terms like immigration or, World War One or World War Two. When you look at those broad topics, there's so much information that exists out there. Students get lost. And so part of this is giving it the crap test. And also when you go into search, being able to search effectively for that information. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Okay, there is a great book out there that I used most of to put this together. But I will say the four moves in a habit, and the most important habit of all is to check your emotions, because if you come across something and it gets you either any sort of emotion, maybe it's like, oh yeah, I knew I was right. Like when you read this, if it makes you angry, if it makes you frustrated, whatever that emotion might be, you need to stop and you need to look at the writing of that particular article or that source. You have to actually slow down and you have to do a fact check, because a lot of times students will find something and they think, well, this is true, this is accurate, and it's absolutely false. So I always say, when you get to some place online and you see that, you need to keep that in mind. The first move number one, is we want you to check to see what else has the author done. I'm, of course, I am a librarian. That's my main gig. And whenever I talk to students about reading books, the first thing I ever do, I don't even read like what a book's about. What I do is I look at who the author is, and I want to learn more about the author. And I think that's because I was a history teacher for so long. I like to learn about the people who write books. And one thing you could do is, if you have that sense of mind to where if you find an article and you're like, wow, this is really interesting, I could use this, you look at who the author is and go, okay, what else has this person written? What else is there? What other websites has this person's work been in? Right. And the other thing you could do is you can go to a fact checking site like PolitiFact. You could use Snopes, which those are like famous ones where you can look and see if something's accurate. But you can look and see like what do they already say about the author, right? If you find a person out there and they have a name and they're a famous scientist, maybe there's other websites that have actually, and there's experts in the field that already looked at that person and said, yes, this person actually knows what they're talking about when it comes to environmental issues or whatever it might be. So that's the first thing. Look and see the history trail and the paper trail of that particular author. Okay. The other thing is to go upstream for the source. So when you find an article, okay, in this video, it's going to talk about it a lot, but I'm just going to go over it real quick. One thing you can do is, if you find an article, like say it comes from a news outlet, say it's an NPR article, oftentimes there's live links inside the article that you can click on, and it will take you to the prior studies where the people put the article together. So it's kind of like you're going down the rabbit hole to search what was the origin of this article being written. Okay. And this is a great video. So teachers, if you want your students to watch this now, I would pause me and then watch the video, and then we'll reconvene. All right. Moving right along. The other thing is to read laterally. Right. So that's what I was talking about before. Like, if you, instead of vertically reading where you're reading up and down, you read the whole thing. Oftentimes too, when I look at an article, I look at the end, because I want to see, usually at the end of an article, they're kind of wrapping up their thesis and all of that. And they're talking about, like, they're kind of recapping what they discussed. I tend to look at that first. So I read the back, then I read the whole thing front if I decide I'm going to use it. So that's just another thing. I read backwards. I read all sorts of ways. But anyways, that's just another tip that I have for you all. So you might want to look to the end of an article to see, okay, does it actually show what I might need to use in evidence in my paper, or in my speech, or whatever you guys are working on. But just know that the sources are not always equal, so that you have to look on the different platforms. Maybe you've got a journalist and you want to see, well, what other news outlets does this journalist write for? Are they only an AP writer, or what do they do? So that's another one. Read across the board. And then this I absolutely love to do. I was going to take this out because right now our district does not give us permission to do this. But I figured I'd put this in here because if you're at home and you're using your private internet, if you're using your private Google and you're just doing some research, talk about taking images that you find on the internet and you can actually right click and you can search the image history. Right now, in our district umbrella, with all of our permissions and everything that we have to, and safety nets that we have, it's not allowed right now. I'm working on trying to get it allowed for students to be able to do this research because I think it's important for you to see the origins of where an image comes from. Because a lot of times what we see on social media, what we click on, it's all images. So, and that's what captures our attention. And sometimes you see crazy things like you see a whale that's on the beach, or you see a moose that's on top of a car, and it's like, is that really real? Did that really happen? And you can actually reverse engineer those images and see like where that original picture came from. And that's kind of fun because that's what we like to do. We're history people, we're social scientists. We like to research and find out how things came to be. But just know that if you try this using RJUHSD Google, it's not going to work for you. But I reckon I left it in here because I feel like it is important, right? So the last move is to circle back, because sometimes you're looking for something. Maybe you're looking for the contribution of nurses during World War One, and you start doing these searches and you realize, oh man, I found so much more resources about nurses who actually were serving in Europe rather than serving in the United States. And so you change. So sometimes in your research, you hit that wall because you realize there's not enough of the information out there, or maybe what you were thinking about was not true. So and that's okay, because there's misinformation and there's disinformation. And misinformation, sometimes it's not intentional that you think you're onto something, and it's just the way that it's put out there, it makes you believe that that's accurate, and it's not accurate. Disinformation is totally different, though. That's when they put something that's incorrect and they put it out there on purpose because they're trying to either sell something, promote something, get you to vote a certain way. Like, that stuff is out there too. So I think the last move there, circling back, is really important, because maybe you decide, all right, I want to do a little bit of a different search than what I initially had done. Okay. Um, Claims. I always talk about reading the back of the article first, right? Because that's kind of where the claim gets rehashed, because the thesis is repeated at the end. But one thing I will say, factual claims versus a value claim. You have to be able to discern and understand when you read something or you see something online, you see something through social media. What's the difference, right? So if something is factual, right, it can either be proven it's true or false. There's verifiable information. You could have, you know, they're not necessarily true, but they attempt to convince you that something's true, right? So smoking causes cancer. That's a true claim. Scientists have proved that. Like, there's not really much that we can debate, right? And the earth is flat. That's a false claim. So those are factual claims, even though the earth is flat is false. The other type of claim is the value claim. This is where students get into trouble when they research and when they're doing things for a history project, they're trying to produce resources. Value claims are difficult because it's when the author has a judgment or a opinion, and really the claim, it can't be proven, it can't be disproven. So they, somebody could say Animal Crossing is the most relaxing game, right? I could say no, it's not. It's Fortnite. But I could build a case that Animal Crossing is the most relaxing, right? Or eating meat is unhealthy. Well, there's also studies that say eating meat is fine, and you need protein, all of that stuff. So this is where it gets difficult, because a lot of times when students are asked to do research or to do an academic paper, they will back their argument up with writings and articles where the author is doing a value claim. And then that's where their argument falls apart. So you have to be careful when it comes to that. So that's another thing to keep in mind, right? Um, we are going to stop the video here because when we start up with our next piece, we're going to talk about the scholarly articles and the popular articles. So I will see you in the next video.